Everybody loves rimfires, and almost everybody out there owns a rimfire rifle of some sort. So we had Ryan Muckenhirn and a new guest, Seth Toy, join us on this one to talk all about the history of rimfire cartridges, the 22LR, NRL 22 Precision rimfire competitions, and also a new optic of ours that happens to be pretty much perfect for those kinds of competitions too. So check it out and let us know what you think.
All right, everybody, welcome. We've got a good crew here around the table. Mark is to my left. Welcome back, Mark. We did a couple of podcasts there for a bit without you.
I know. I was missing you guys.
It's good to have you here. Not sure. I think some people are going to be listening to this around late April or so. So we'll hope the world is in good shape at that point in time. But right now, we were able to bring together a really good group. So across the table from us is Mr. Ryan Muckenhirn. We're going to be talking about some cartridge stuff, and we know a lot of you like hearing Ryan's thoughts on cartridge things. And for the first time to this podcast, Seth Toy across the table.
Here I am. Happy to be here.
Welcome.
Long-time listener, first-time participant.
Yes, excellent. Well, we appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah.
And you are going to discuss some things that are very cool and related to 22LR. We're gonna kind of do this in segments, if you will, and kick it off going into a little bit of the history, almost like our own 10-minute talk on just the 22LR. Would you say, Mark and I were discussing this a little bit earlier, Ryan, would you say the 22LR is actually America's cartridge?
Yeah.
Even more so maybe than the 30-06 or the 3040 Craig or whatever else you got up your sleeve, 308?
Well, rimfires existed kind of, there's almost like a convergent evolution situation with metallic cartridges, because there were rimfires at various points in the world at a given time. Now, the 22LR, yeah, I would say probably America's cartridge.
Because who hasn't shot one that shot a gun?
It's everywhere.
Maybe if you haven't even shot a gun before, you just don't remember you actually have shot a 22.
Well, let's do a quick exercise here. The first, cartridge that you fired, Jim, go.
9mm, sorry.
Are you serious?
Yeah, sorry. It was my brother's Beretta.
Fair enough.
He was like, hey, this is what I carry. And then it was just kind of like, cool. And I shot it. And then I think I went to a 22 right after that.
Fair enough. Well, we'll continue the exercise.
I ruined it.
Ryan?
Rimfire, speaking of 22 long rifle, is actually an evolution of the rimfire rounds. It was not the first 22 rimfire. There were others. And then it stretched out, and it's not even the last 22 rimfire.
Yeah, but the first one you shot.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. No, I got a little weird there.
I know. I was like, how are you going to give us a history?
I actually think the first cartridge I ever shot was a 45 ACP.
What the heck? Sorry, Mark. I
exercise.
ruined your exercise.
No, everybody, honestly,
I shot a 22 first.
There we go.
I'm a standard, good old-fashioned red-blooded American, and I shot a 22 first.
Myself in that camp as well, 50%. But I tell you what, my confidence level was so high. We're going to go 100%.
Listen.
Sorry about that, Mark.
Yeah, it was my grandfather. He had a very different way of doing things, and it was the 45 ACP.
You're not wading into the pool. You're jumping.
But it shortly
superior knockdown power
correct.
of the 45 ACP.
And he had that mentality. It was 100%. And from there, it became the 22 long rifle.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. The 22, though, so you were getting into the fact that it wasn't the first ever rimfire.
No.
But it has become kind of the rimfire. Sometimes people just say, when they just say rimfire, they're just talking about the 22
the assumption
LR.
is 22 LR.
Right,
yeah.
right. How did that come to be?
So, interestingly, you could look at it a couple different ways. So there was gallery shooting, which was kind of a very common pastime. Like you'd go to the fair and they've got the pneumatic guns that you shoot the little BBs and you shoot the stars out of. Well, long ago, in a country far, far away, that was the early U.S., gallery shooting was still very popular. And also in Europe as well. And rimfires were kind of the arm of choice, whether it was a 22 or a 32, even some 45 and 44 caliber rimfire guns were considered these gallery guns. And so it was a
Like a game?
Yeah, yep. So it was a shooting game, like knock over chickens, pigs, little targets. Had to shoot you had to shoot through a ring. If you hit the edge of the ring, you didn't win. If you went through the middle, you did.
It's like darts.
Yeah.
Hard darts.
Yeah.
Basically what it was.
Way better,
with
cooler
rifles.
darts.
Yeah.
Correct. And some
Significantly cooler.
of the most fantastic innovations in firearms started there. Like when we think of target sights that you would see on like a small bore rifle or even a large bore target rifle,
Like one of those Olympian style, right? Like the peep sight at the rear? Is that
similar setups started in galleries, and these were like very precise aiming devices with like micrometer adjustments on them, and would have been very like crude firearms in modern times, but kind of laid the groundwork for some pretty interesting stuff. Different shooting techniques, stances, holds, things like this found their roots in gallery and small bore competitions, in the 1800s. And so rimfire is kind of an evolution of if we took a percussion cap that we would find on a muzzleloader, put a small amount of powder in it, aside from its priming compound, and then a projectile on top of it. Squish it together, what do you get? A rimfire.
Interesting.
So from the kind of pond we crawled out of percussion ignition on like a side lock on a muzzleloader into this contained unit that was a rimfire. And it started, I think, was the Fulbert, the first 22.
Like the 1840s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically the cap and a ball, a small diameter ball stuck on it. And then it had a little flange that would provide adequate head spacing so that it would just stay in place and not go too deep into the chamber. You cock it back and hit it and boom, and propel that little ball down the bore.
Interesting.
Yep. And then that expanded into large caliber rimfires. There are, 30 and 32 and 38 and 41 and 44 and all the way up the line. And then we got into centerfire ignition. So a lot of those rimfires faded into obscurity or were converted to centerfire guns for modern use, because the rimfire case is like a one-time use thing for the most part.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. Maybe explain the difference between a rimfire case and a centerfire case.
Yeah. So in modern times with a rimfire case, you've got a solid piece of brass that has no hole in the back for a primer to ignite it. The priming compound is actually in the rim of the case. And so the hammer strikes it, and much like regular priming compound that we would find in a primer, it detonates under that pressure, ignites the powder charge, propels a projectile down the bore. So that case is then completely discarded. For all conventional purposes, non-reloadable.
Right.
Now, if you are really enthusiastic, you can
No.
reload. Yeah.
No.
Yep.
No.
You can.
It's super weird.
Yep. And
Do you do it, Seth?
I don't because
That-
I'm not a psychopath. But
Yeah,
there
that
are
is a
people out
whole.
there.
That is a whole nother
Is
level.
that the test we need to conduct? Would you reload this? If you answer yes,
The equipment.
Get out.
The equipment is very miniaturized. It's really cool stuff. It's very miniaturized and extremely tedious.
Yep.
And a lot of the folks that do it are grinding the heads off of matches for priming compound. There's some chemistry involved. The really adept guys have these special little spinning tables that you put the case on. Super cool. You eyedropper in a like a half a milliliter of priming compound, and then you spin the case at a very high rate of speed, and it deposits in an even fashion the priming compound around the perimeter of the rim.
what are we reloading for ants?
But it's super expensive stuff.
Yeah.
Like really.
Really?
And can you imagine the number of people out there that do this? It's like 8 guys. In fact, you're better off converting your 22 long rifle to a 22 long rifle centerfire, which you can do.
No way. That's
Yep,
a thing?
Absolutely. They make specialized brass that is 22 LR centerfire. That's a better, more economically feasible option.
Right.
What?
Right. Because, I don't even.
It's very
I
strange.
thought I was just going to learn about shooting pop cans today, but
so
learning about way more.
It's a weird world out
it
there.
is. What's really neat about 22 LR is it used to be black powder, and then it adapted to smokeless. It's a very different smokeless powder than we would see in like our conventional centerfire rifle cartridges. Much faster burning, like think pistol powder, only accelerated considerably.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's got a burn characteristic not dissimilar to black powder. As far as black powder, like we've talked about in other podcasts, is poof, yeah, big flash. Rimfire powder is much like that. For the most part, it's not worth reloading. At least I don't know that I'd tell anybody. Yeah, if you're really looking to get into the weeds on a reloading setup, go ahead and get yourself a Rimfire reloader. I don't know if I would ever have that much time to do that. Yeah. But it's neat.
and you have a lot of time to do weird stuff.
Yeah, and that's like a whole different level.
You hunt for plants and you reload ammos and stuff.
You got to pop the rim out and misshape the rim to knock the firing pin mark out, and then you have to inspect it to make sure that it didn't pierce the brass case, and then you have to reform it so that it has a new rim.
Yeah.
You got to clean it and prime it, and you got these microscopic powder dippers and
little tiny spoons and scoops.
We and this is my apologies, probably the craziness getting into my head. We hardly got to let Seth introduce himself, but as Seth introduces himself and explains why he's into all this crazy stuff, maybe not to psychotic levels apparently,
No.
I'm curious about all the ammo selection now because the 22 LR, there's so much different kinds of ammo. I mean, they got everything from like 22 LR that acts like a shotgun to 22 short you have here in front of us and stuff that suppresses to the point that you can't hear anything when it goes off aside from the little rim getting clipped and, all that stuff. Anyway, Seth, what, maybe as part of your introduction, what made you like this stuff so much?
For starters, it was super accessible. I mean, every gun shop or hardware store has 22s behind the counter, or at least they did before stuff got weird. And so just the fact that, you could spend, I mean, back then it was $1 a box or less for 22s, now getting into $3 a box or whatever. But it was a way to get a high volume of shooting done at not a lot of money. And there's no shortage of rifles out there that shoot 22 long rifle really well, but really affordably. And so I was around a lot of like bullseye shooters in the area I came from, and the people that introduced me to shooting and reloading at a young age started me on a 22. And
Thank you, Seth.
Yeah, and it's something
There you go, Mark.
something that stuck with me kind of ever since. Kind of whatever your level of participation is, there's a 22 sport for you. So whether you're going to spend $9,000 on a custom bench rest rifle so that you can shoot 25 perfect bullseyes in a row at 100 yards with your 22, or if you want to shoot cans or shoot steel really fast. I mean, because it's been around since the 1870s, people have had a lot of time to figure out that 22s are super fun.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I think that's the funny thing too, because you think about cartridges that have been around that long or that were around then, and this little thing stuck around long enough to still be one of the most prolific cartridges or one of the most ubiquitous cartridges out there.
I mean, that is
Look at anybody's safe.
Oh, yeah.
So, Mark, to your point too, whether or not it was the first gun you shot, look in anybody's safe. There's a 22 there.
There is one, and the variety of firearms. You look at its availability in pistols and rifles, and Seth's talking about any number of
Autoloaders.
applications. It's almost like the cartridge that's been adopted by every firearm platform, and a variant of its application.
Everybody wants to do a 22 LR conversion kit on any gun they have.
Absolutely.
It's hilarious.
Yep.
Everything from single action revolvers to belt fed machine guns, they make them in 22
that
because
sounds
it's
so
the
awesome.
best that there is. Actually, I was talking to one of the other engineers that works with me in new product development, Connor McDermott, and I don't know if you know, but before he was here working on the AMG team developing optics, he actually worked for Winchester Ammunition. And so he's one of the guys who was on the team that developed 350 Legend, actually.
wow.
Pretty interesting guy. And we were talking about 22 manufacturing methods on the way here, and he was saying that the machines there put out more 22s in an hour that I could shoot in a lifetime. And I accepted that as a personal challenge. So I would really like to get a belt-fed 22 and see if I can outpace the Winchester reloading machines. So if anyone, knows somebody, give me a shout. That's something I want to do.
Good to know. Yeah, great personal plug there. I like it.
Well, and also maybe a little bit of a segue into, Seth, you're talking about people that you work with here at Vortex, but what do you got going on here at Vortex?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I'm fortunate enough to work with a really talented team of engineers in product development here. So I'm a mechanical engineer, and I work on developing rifle scopes and the mechanical components inside that. So we'll work closely with the optical engineers to make the sweet stuff that we have here at Vortex.
Very neat. Very neat.
Living the dream.
We're going to talk later on about one of the sweet things that you guys make down in that department. It's actually here on the table, so if you're watching, you may get a sneak peek. But if you're listening, you just got to keep listening. 22 ammo is kind of interesting. Like you said, there's so many different applications for it. So one thing I know we talk about in a lot of our other cartridge podcasts, you kind of mentioned what it's good for, what's its primary use. So I know people use it for hunting in especially small game and stuff. But now they use it for plinking, certainly. And now they're using it for even long range stuff. They're using it for, there's always like the inevitable discussion about self-defense and 22s and should you do it, should you not, whatever. But it's a thing out there. You got stories about 22s use in assassins and stuff like that. I mean, it's a cartridge that's done everything.
Everything.
Training.
Let's talk training. Let's talk about one big one, though, hunting. And everybody always is wanting to know, what's the biggest thing you can go after with whatever? Mostly small game with 22.
Yep.
And pretty much like you would say with anything. I mean, it's, you place a bullet anywhere in a good enough spot and it can take down anything. But its primary use, what would you guys say?
Squirrels, rabbits, rodents, birds, partridge, pheasants. That's all good for that if your state allows it. That kind of thing. I've taken a coyote with a 22 long rifle.
No way.
Yeah. Yep. It worked a lot better than I think a lot of people might imagine it would work. It was a good broadside shot at a moderate distance, and it behaved just like it would have if I would have taken the animal with a 223.
What projectile choice are you using when you're going hunting with 22?
If I'm hunting regular small game, it's kind of whatever shoots the best out of that rifle. That particular coyote was taken with a 36 grain CCI mini mag.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
You didn't even step it up to the Stinger.
No, the Stingers didn't shoot that great, but that was a mini mag. It worked well. But there's a good report of a gal in, I believe, South Africa that had, and somebody should internet search this one and read up on the story. I think it was South Africa, had a nuisance elephant that was raiding garbage cans and a garden. And she had fired at the elephant with her rifle. And reportedly the bullet went between the ribs and actually struck the animal in its heart. And after a period of time, it tipped over dead.
So the 22.
Yeah, probably not a great choice, but it apparently worked, and that's been I guess well documented. It's been talked about quite a bit.
Little known elephant gun.
Yeah,
Absolutely amazing. But I mean, you're right, Ryan. I think it's something important to bring up. Like you're talking about that coyote, fairly, I guess, large animal to take down with a 22, but you hit something in a soft spot, you poke a hole in its lungs, it's probably going to tip over. And I feel like for people who maybe are less familiar with shooting at times, they have a misconception that the 22 is like the equivalent of like a Red Ryder BB gun. They're like, oh, I mean, if you get shot, it's just a 22.
I mean, they practically think you can go around like shooting each other with it.
Right. And I've heard people say that. I'm like, are you insane? Because, you're talking, I was like, pretty big,
It's the same. It's the same diameter as a 223.
Yeah.
Now, it's not in the same size. Obviously, you're shooting 55 grain versus, whatever. But even that's not like...
It's not that far off. It's certainly more than dangerous. It's deadly.
Ask a
I mean,
number of
not
presidents and political figures.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not to get into story time, but I will. My father tells a story. He and my grandfather were out picking blackberries. It was August, and it was back in the days when blackberries were essentially like a non-game species, and they always had a pump 22 in the truck with a 4-power scope on it, and caught a black bear going across the clear cut, and my grandpa basically emptied the magazine of the pump 22, and black bear went in the bushes, and he reloaded the gun and sent my dad in after to go retrieve it, and he was dead in the bushes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Unbelievable. That's crazy.
So I mean, it's is it going to be your ideal choice?
Is this one we recommend?
No. Am I, yeah.
As Vortex, do we recommend? No.
Yeah, do not take that tale as like a condoning or a recommendation, but I think it just speaks to I mean, it's not an elephant story. Ryan kind of took the thunder.
There's
out of
really
that
nothing
one,
else you can say after the elephant thing.
Yeah.
They don't make things bigger than that.
They just don't. For the long range kind of stuff that people are getting into now. First off, what is long range? What's the effective range of a 22? How do you fathom that? It's weird. It's the first time I heard about it, I chuckled because people were saying, "Oh yeah, long range plinking with a 22 or shooting out to a couple hundred yards." I thought to myself, "What?
Yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense." The same thing that I like to shoot soda cans at 30 yards with.
Yep.
And I'm feeling like a superhero when I can
Yeah.
pick one offhand at 30 yards.
Yeah. So long range with the 22, I think, is like anything over 100 yards is, in my opinion, considered long range. With modern optics and the modern rifles out there, 500 yards is not out of the question.
That's baffling.
And there are people that are pushing that threshold further and further and further every day. And in my experience, 500 is about my cutoff. That's as far as I've brought them with any degree of repeatable accuracy. Outside of that, there's so many variables that come into play that it really shows you your bad habits. Then any kind of wind, and I'm talking any kind of wind, has you completely out of the runnings for success.
What kind of bullets are you shooting when you're shooting at long range? Because whenever I think of a 22 bullet, I'm not thinking of exactly what looks like the most slippery thing in the world.
No, they're not. They have bad profiles from the standpoint of like what we expect. Like you said, a slippery bullet would look like.
Yeah.
They're lead. They're not jacketed. They don't have any racy red tips or anything like that.
No, they look straight out of 18. Whatever.
Yeah.
Now they do make jacketed versions, so
Do they?
No.
There's
one new one out there.
Oh, yeah.
That is lathe turned. But when you see a quote copper 22 bullet like those 36 grain CCI Minimax,
okay, that's what I was thinking of.
they're not jacketed. They're plated.
Yeah,
or copper washed, in which they're like put into a powdered copper matrix and like tumbled until the copper deposits on them.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and assume that that's not purely aesthetics, and there is it's performing a similar function.
Oh, we're at 22 minutes.
Hell yeah.
Just wanted to point it out.
to a degree. Yep. To a degree that adds a bit of, I guess you'll call it like structural integrity to the bullet, maybe keeping it from coming apart.
What about fouling?
You'll see it. Like if you shoot only lead bullets in your bore, and you were to look at your bore, you'll see a kind of a gray deposit. And if you shoot copper jacketed or copper clad or plated, whatever you want to call it, bullets, you'll see the deposit of the copper all the way to the end of the muzzle. Much the same. What I found most interesting when I started shooting this long range 22 stuff was that high velocity ammunition. So over the sonic barrier was not as good as ammunition under the sonic barrier.
Accuracy wise.
Correct. It specifically extended distances. So my particular rifle that I use for that game it shoots high velocity ammo very well, like some of it anyway. When we started shooting it at like 300, 400, and 500 yards, the high velocity stuff was completely and totally out of the running. Like it was glaringly obvious that wasn't the answer.
Is that because it's getting thrown off when it goes from supersonic to subsonic so much? Like that little thing is affected so much?
That crossing of that barrier is enough to completely destabilize the projectile. Because they're not even weighted the same way that a regular projectile is. Their weight, like their mass distribution, is different than what you would see in like a long-range match ball. They don't even fly the same way. And when we switched to subsonic, it was like flipping a light switch. It certainly required more adjustment to get there, but the stability was retained throughout the entirety of the range. And when we were shooting at 400 yards, which is really where like my personal rifle shoots quite well. If we had an 8-inch plate at 400 yards, keeping 10 rounds on that 8-inch plate would be easy to do if we had good environmentals. With the subsonics, with the supersonics, it was a whole nother ballgame. You might get a hit or two.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
that seems to be a common theme though. Like, guys that are doing, match stuff, or I think even like the Olympic type stuff. I mean, if you're looking for supreme accuracy, guys are actually shooting the subsonics.
Yep, absolutely.
It's interesting to hear too for the long range stuff too. You'd like, oh man, don't you need enough? You need enough gas to get it out there,
right? And they're to a point, and they don't even call it subsonic; they call it standard velocity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
probably to avoid confusion or people thinking, not as good.
Yeah, because there are some subsonic loads out there that are completely different. They're made for doing other things. They're made for, shooting suppressed for like ultimate suppression, and then you get into some goofy weighted bullets. Like you go all the way up to a 60 grain lead bullet,
right?
And they've got some 29 grain stuff, and that's a whole nother animal. True subsonic 22 long rifle.
My gosh, a 60 grain 22 LR.
Yeah, it looks so. If you were to take a 22
5.56
short case, and you were to put the 60 grain projectile in it, it would be the same length overall as the 22 long rifle case would be with a 40 grain projectile in it. And there's, to my knowledge, only one manufacturer that makes it. It's a Gia Ammunition or a Gila. I'm actually not sure on the pronunciation. Yep. And it's called the 60 grain SSS load, Sniper Subsonic. You need
Sniper.
Yeah, you need a 1 in 8 twist to stabilize it.
AKA a 1 in what?
1 in 8.
So AKA the Assassin.
22
LR.
Yeah, if you put a suppressor on it, they are comically quiet.
Interesting.
Even I've got a bunch of those, and even without the suppressor,
they're quiet.
Well, and that is yeah. Even without it, they're pretty quiet.
Yeah.
They are. They're good for pest control in urban environments.
Yes.
Well, can
Allegedly.
you shoot a 22 short out of a 22 LR?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So
Double check on that though.
When we were talking about that rim early in the podcast, and we were talking about how that rim controls that headspace. So making sure that the case is indexed properly in the barrel and in the cartridge, or in the chamber, excuse me. That rim is the same on a short as it is on a long rifle. It's only the length of the case, the powder charge, and the bullet weight that's going
that
to.
thing is cute.
Yeah, and they make them shorter than this. If you look at a 22 BB cap or a 22 Fulbert, they're even shorter yet, and they look comical. They look like the Baby Yoda version.
What's the point of those?
If you've got one of those old gallery guns that could be chambered in 22 BB or 22 Fulbert, that's the only thing you can do with them. Very obscure.
Yeah.
But the rims are the same. The rim diameters are the same, and the whole rear end of the case is the same. So much like a 357 could shoot a 38 special, or a 38 short Colt. This is like the same thing on a scaled down version. So yeah, you can shoot it in your 22 long rifle, assuming that your rifle will feed them.
Yeah.
So some guns have a magazine issue that prevents them from feeding shorts, well. But certain guns, like Remington, had a rifle called the 572 Fieldmaster, which was a pump action. And you could fill it with like 22 shorts.
Ooh.
And it fed like a Singer sewing machine.
Nice.
So it's pretty cool.
How about now we discussed the long range stuff a little bit. And one of the things we were going to get into in this one was discussing this new thing. Well, at this point in time, I wouldn't say it's new as though, a lot of people haven't heard of it, but some people may have not heard of it, which is the competitive, I think, NRL 22 style shooting. Now, if I recall correctly, NRL has other kinds of competitions, right? It's sort of a governing body or something along those lines that has many different competitions under it. And so there may be other 22 LR competitions outside of NRL, but that they were kind of like what were they, like the first ones or the main ones to make it popular or something?
They're one of the kind of organizational bodies. So you have your PRS community that does this similar style matches. They have different kinds of rules and different things they've agreed upon. People get really upset about the use of tripods in certain instances too. But NRL is the National Rifle League. They're an organization that has put together a kind of a rule book and a rifle series so that you can shoot the series of matches and get ranked with other people shooting these matches all across the country.
Okay.
And they've grown. There's huge regions everywhere to kind of get involved with all this stuff. But one of the things that they noticed, or I assume that they noticed because they did it, is that like long range precision shooting is only so accessible. Like not everyone has 1,000-yard range out their back door.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have 100-yard ranges out their back door, or maybe even a 200-yard range, or there's a local club that has 100-yard range available. And so what they did is they kind of took the similar approach to the NRL stuff, the centerfire stuff, and then they created NRL 22, which is kind of a much more accessible way for people to get introduced and involved in positional precision shooting.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because with a 22 also, and you're shooting out to 100 yards even, you start having to, or, you know, even when you stretch it out a little bit to, say, 200 or 300 yards, you're really starting to have to do a lot of the stuff that the precision centerfire guys are doing at much greater distances, just because you're shooting a slower, smaller, more affected by environmental stuff, cartridge or projectile.
The really cool, like, ballistic equivalent that people like to use when they describe NRL 22 is a 22 long rifle is going to drop and be affected by wind in a similar way at 100 yards that a 308 would be affected at 400 yards. So it's like kind of scaling the whole operation down. And then, of course, as you get to 200, 300, 400, 500 yards, things get crazy. It's the equivalent of, you know, there's people that are shooting 2 miles right now with centerfire stuff.
Okay, I thought you were going to say 22s.
No.
I was going to throw the headset off and just walk away.
I'm sure they have inadvertently shot that far before.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they were
something.
doing any long-range precision shooting at 2 miles with Rimfire. That's the next big wave 10 years from now. It's going to be
22 king at 2 mile.
Yep.
You know how in hunter safety, you know, people say like, hey, you know, obviously don't be careful where you're pointing your muzzle, and you know it may seem somewhat benign, but you know that bullet can travel
A long way.
Oh, yeah.
Extreme distances, right? You know, including 22s. A buddy of mine that I went to school with took a 22 round to the buttocks. Never heard the shot. Has no idea where it came from.
Really?
Yes.
Just something bit him.
Where was he?
He literally got bit.
Was it in college at the frat house, just kind of hanging out?
No, it wasn't there.
By God, I got this 22 in my butt.
It was he lived in the country. He's from a small town, lived out in the country.
Wow.
So
That's
anyway,
wild, man.
I mean, that's terrifying, though.
be careful.
You know, you're out there and you know,
I don't even think he knew what it was at first.
you lay down, you think, is somebody after me? Did I do something? What side of fence am I on here?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's
That's
there's
excellent.
another story for you. It's
On that note,
story time with Mark.
so NRL 22.
How many you want?
Appreciate that. Now, and one of the cool things I've noticed with people shooting this is that this is kind of, I think I had in a podcast, the one where we were talking about choosing your rifle scope. I believe I went on a bit of a rant. But we, I don't even know if that one's going to release before this one or after. But anyway, I was talking about how
you're upset, Jim.
I wasn't upset. I was just
Passionate,
animated.
yes.
But the whole kind of like a grassroots kind of thing, you know, where you look at PRS, and I'm not going to poo-hoo anybody in PRS. I think it's awesome. I think, you know, some of these centerfire long-range competitions are really cool, but the guns are expensive. The ammo can start to get expensive. The ranges you have to go to, or the travel that's involved gets expensive. The gear gets expensive. And you have a lot of folks now getting, and manufacturers making products and gear that is, it's like downsized versions of the bigger stuff. And so Ruger's got it's like the RPR, but 22.
Yep.
And they're not the only ones. There's tons of other people making bolt-action 22s that are precise enough or accurate enough to compete in these ways. The ammo's cheaper. The guns are cheaper. You don't have to... When you get a... let's say you went out and you got that Ruger, because it's the first one I can think of off the top of my head right now. Let's say you got that gun. That one you don't as much... and maybe this is just me. If I get a 22 LR that's basically set up to shoot long range for 22 LR, I don't feel the need to change it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel the need to start swapping barrels, putting bigger ones on, fluting it, putting in different, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, cool, put an optic on it and go. Whereas with the centerfire stuff, you get a little bit more, there's always more you can eke out of it, but maybe it's part of the comical almost or just fun nature of a 22. It's like, hey, it's good enough, so I'll use it.
Well, that could be changing now too, though.
Yeah, I know.
This year when we were at SHOT Show, I think a really common theme was it's the year of the rimfire.
And I'm so excited.
Because they're doing stuff with 22s now in rifles, and I think it's all coming out of this NRL 22 style shooting.
Yeah.
That perpetual arms race and upgrade race that was synonymous with only the centerfire guys is starting to bleed over into the rimfire crowd. In which, do they have the same classing structure?
There is hope because there is a class structure.
Okay.
So one of the things that NRL 22 did to keep it accessible is they have a base class similar to like the PRS production
Is
class.
it
that's like
price?
It is price based.
Is that like spec racing where base?
Yeah, like you just can't spend more than a certain amount of money or else you're a cheater and you get moved to open division.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is. So
Sweet.
So there are people that are doing crazy stuff with 22s. Voodoo Gun Works is making some phenomenally accurate 22s that, the new Bergara also, that fit in Remington 700 chassis and take Remington 700 triggers. And they have AICS pattern magazines that fit in the same stuff. So you can buy your MDT ACC chassis or your Manor stuff, and you can do centerfire stuff.
Everything I said was wrong.
Yeah.
Well,
but the hope is because of base division or base class, because what they've done is they have a cap for the MSRP of the optic and the MSRP of the rifle. If you add those two together and it's less than $1,050, then you're in base class and you compete against other people that are in base class.
Nice.
So that
I bet you could make a hell of a rig for $1,050.
Yes, you could.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And especially to be competitive within that range. The other thing that's nice is that the targets, at least for the supplied stages monthly, are pretty generous. So you could show up with Grandpa's 1022, and you can show up and you can still be competitive in base class. Whereas, it's a little unsettling when you show up and you've got Grandpa's rifle or you've got the rifle that you got when you were a kid, and there's a guy who has built a PRS training rifle that's identical in every specification except cartridge to his other one that kind of dwarfs you in price range. At least you're not competing against that guy.
Yeah.
I could see that being a little bit demoralizing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We saw when I used to shoot USPSA and multi-gun competition, it was the same way.
Yep.
You'd be outclassed if you showed up at a 3-gun competition if you were shooting a $500 Glock that you saved for, where a gentleman's running a $3,000 pistol.
Right.
Something of that nature. In those base classes, do you see more bolt guns or like 1022 style actions?
I think it's kind of all over the place.
Okay.
I mean, people have their Savage Mark IIs that they've had. The CZs are a really popular base class rifle, and then the 1022s, of course. But yeah, I mean, I've seen some people that'll even bring like a tube-fed semi-auto, like the old the Marlin Model 6s and whatever. Now, NRL in their rule book does recommend, like, please bring a detachable box magazine because tube-fed magazines are really hard to keep safe.
Yep.
Just because you're sitting over there unloading 15 rounds into the dirt or the hand of the guy next to you. Like, please catch all of these on the unload and show clear command. But I mean, it's really cool because it's bring whatever you have and you can play. But then if you're bit by the bug, you can dial it up to 11, which is what a lot of people really like to be able to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Part of
Right.
me thinks like that like how I was explaining it. Part of me thinks, oh yeah, I'd be able to avoid the bug. You get a 22, it's good enough. It shoots well, you do it. But I could see how it would be.
Yeah.
I think it'd be difficult to resist because it sounds fun.
It does sound fun. And I'm sure that the parts, too, are less expensive than their centerfire cousins. So then you're kind of thinking to yourself, it's not as bad. And then next thing you know, add to cart, add to cart, add to cart.
Yeah, and pretty soon you've got a $4,000 bolt action 22.
And you're shooting a $23 box of 22.
Is that what that stuff is these days?
Wait a
It's like
minute.
21.
Wow.
This is
Yeah.
$23?
So
How many are in here? 50 rounds?
Yep.
So it still does represent a pretty noticeable cost savings over even 6.5 Creedmoor and
for sure.
308.
Yep.
But in terms of 22 long rifle, I guess that's spectacularly expensive.
So like the CCI standard velocity, which is something I've shot more cases of than I care to admit when I know my wife might listen to this. It's like $3.50 a box. And it shoots really well. Some rifles really love it. This rifle, for example, loves CCI standard velocity. So at $3.50 a box, a match is going to be maybe 1 or 2 boxes. So,
Okay.
you're not spending
that's not
$80 on centerfire ammo to shoot an NRL match. But then you can get into, just trying to eke a little bit more out of your ammo performance. So this box, I think, was like $6 or $7, and that's what my rifle really likes right now. And then you can go.
What is that standard?
It's the SK Standard Plus.
Okay.
Yep. So then you can kind of step it up to like a Lapua Center X, which is like $10 or $11, which is usually like
Lapua,
Yeah.
22 LR.
yeah. So
That's awesome.
they actually own SK. They're the same kind of thing, and they're similar.
Okay.
But no 338s. It's all biathlon rifles. And bullseye folks, and NRL 22 people. So you've got the Center X, which is like $11 a box. And I personally kind of draw the line there for like match ammo. Is like I can almost maybe justify $10 a box to like go shoot a match and know that I'm like eking the limit out of my performance. But then you go to Crazy Town or Necessary Town for some people.
Yes.
At $20+ a box for the Ely 10X and the like Lapua. They have one up there, but I don't even know what it is.
What are these doing differently than this CCI standard velocity?
Well, they're going the same speed, which is insulting, and they're the same weight. But I think it's about quality control and tolerances. So
even if you
the
look at the
projectile design is a
box,
little
look if you
The box is engineered. You can't even pull the little box out of the big box, and it's made out of polymer and not like paper.
how much these would shake and move in there versus how much those would move. Whether the box could be inadvertently crushed, or how like the protection of the ammunition in the box is a component in that cost. And I suppose when you're shooting, especially a discipline like IR50, when I think of like the Formula One of rimfire competition, I think IR50, like those guys and gals
they're not messing around.
yes,
Yeah.
like they make hard topped ammo containers for 22 long rifle that are foam inserts, so you put your cartridges in there because they're that particular about how that bullet is protected from the time it leaves, wherever they get it from the tap, I guess. I don't know how you to the time they shoot it.
Interesting.
There's a lot going on.
You can't reload for it, right? So you got to be able to control every variable that you can control to the umpteenth degree. So like the Voodoo that I mentioned earlier is a controlled round feed, and so like the thing that makes it particularly interesting is the magazine design and the way it like gently coddles the cartridge and lifts it into position and torpedoes it into the chamber rather than letting it rattle around and shake its way into the chamber. It does not touch anything, and it just goes right in, and you haven't deformed your bullet at all because you haven't jammed it off the side of a chamber wall or a feed ramp. You haven't messed with anything, and so you just get that optimum like.
Interesting.
That is interesting. Because up until now, I've been thinking of that accuracy as like separate things. Like, oh, I've got really accurate ammo, and I've got a really accurate rifle, or I've got a rifle that really likes that ammo.
Yep.
But now it's like, no, it's how is that rifle feeding that ammo?
Yep.
Right.
How is the firing pin striking the
maintaining
the
its
case head
integrity?
too?
Yeah.
People get really
firing pin. I forgot about that.
obsessed with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets bananas.
We got a rim thickness gauge. We went that deep into it. We discovered that if you took bulk 22 ammo, like you go to the store and you see the brick, 525 cartridges.
Got one on my desk.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't know why I have it there, but it just
That's where it lives.
We have a customer that frequents us, and he was telling me that the key to success, or much of the key to the success, is in 22 long rifle accuracies and the rim thickness. When we were talking about that headspace changing, well, if your rim is real proud or thick, it's going to headspace differently than if it's a thin rim.
okay.
And the firing pin's going to hit it at a different point, and you're going to get different ignitions, and you might cant or yaw the bullet in the chamber. So he said, get one of these rim thickness gauges and sort your 22 long rifle ammo by rim thickness, and do a random test versus a lot test with this, and you'll see that your particular rifle at a particular point in cleanliness is going to favor a rim thickness. And it kind of worked. It was very strange.
So everything I said about people just picking up 22s and being just cool with it is entirely.
Depends on
what
how-
I'm gathering is that the 22LR crowd is actually probably the most anal about
I think there's a
everything.
couple subsets though. I
Yeah.
think you've got your regular folks that are like, hey, this is fun and economical and inviting to all age groups and experience levels. And then you've got
The fun ruiners.
the fun runners who
yeah.
who have figured out really what it takes to get that
They're
extraordinarily
the people
high
that
level.
are they're the serious fun havers.
I
everybody has
say that in
those.
jest because, like we've talked about before, those are the people that everybody else benefits from.
They
Yeah.
do. They push the limits. They push the boundaries and make stuff super awesome for
Yeah.
everybody else. But
Well,
there are always those people who take something fun and everybody else is kind of goofing around with, oh yeah, it's super cool, and they get really serious about it.
I think
And that's how they have fun though.
that's everything, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely. I don't care. Cars, fishing, shooting 22s, whatever. I mean, you're going to have that, and I think that's, even though we're talking about that progression of like you start doing this with Grandpa's 22 or the one that you had, and you're like, that's cool, that was fun, and then you're like, well, what if I did
can I have
this?
more
What if
fun?
I did
Yeah.
that? And I think that's just human.
I think that's the reason it's been around for 140 years or so, is every generation has had their opportunity to take the 22, learn on it, figure out how fun it is, challenge their buddies to an era-appropriate competition for it, and then dial it up to 11, and then the next generation gets fed that knowledge, and it's not going away. I mean, the biathlon rifles, all of the Olympic shooting rifles are... Not all of them, there's air rifle and whatever. But for the large part, they're 22 long rifle. And so for people who are really trying to optimize Olympic level shooting performance, you've got Olympic level R&D going into the ammunition for these sports. And so you have that top level support, and it goes the whole way to grassroots, which is why it's hugely popular.
Can it get any better than this?
Well, that's an often debated topic.
Can rifles get better than the one that's sitting on the table? Is that what you're asking?
Oh, well, I don't know about this one on the rifle.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't know. You're talking about everybody keeps pushing the boundaries, and then sometimes you think to yourself, like, I mean, we're talking about controlled feeding, super accurate rifles that are shooting $23 boxes of 22 LR, and they got crazy awesome optics on top, which again we have to get to. But where can they keep going?
Well, you look at just like anything, even
lathe turn bullets,
lathe turn bullets. But look, and
3D printed 22 LR.
That's not a bad idea, Jim.
Patented.
Consider that a patent. I think that's
how that
We'll
works.
talk to.
Yep, you just say it, and then it's,
Totally
it's
how
like
that works.
shotgun.
I declare bankruptcy.
Dibs. You're good. But look at technologies as technology, even with the centerfire stuff or whatever you got rangefinders, ballistic calculators, things that just weren't there before that you can take and apply to centerfire game, 22 LR game, whatever.
Is the 22 Creedmoor a rimfire or is it a centerfire?
Centerfire.
Okay. Anyway, let's talk about the equipment here.
Yeah.
You have on the table in front of us. What is this? Which one is this? A CZ what?
It's a CZ 457. So it's the new iteration of the 452, the 455, and now we're on the 457.
Okay.
So CZ, it's a bolt action 22 that feeds from the same.
Can I hold it?
Yeah, please. It bites though, so be careful.
Okay, cool.
So it feeds from the same magazines that have been really popular for a long time, but they fixed a couple of things, in my opinion, on that rifle that were like mild inconveniences that you had to put up with before. And now I think there's absolutely zero excuse. So the first of those things is now the safety.
Fun little mag.
There it is. Now the safety goes the correct direction. So it's push to fire. For the long time, it was, toward you was fire.
Just silly.
They've got a really nice adjustable trigger in it now, and then the trigger guard is metal rather than, was it polymer before or just stamped?
Stamped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you think they changed that for functionality, or because they got tired of fielding the call, hey, you put my safety on backwards?
I think there were enough 4-H instructors that were like, hey, we would run CZs, but everyone's going to go home to their Remington 700 and the safety's going to be backwards.
Yep.
So if we're training these kids on 22s to go shoot a 700 30-06 for, a deer camp, they're going to have their rifle on safe accidentally because they have their hundreds of rounds of practice on a safety that's backwards.
Or maybe worse,
Well,
have it on unsafe.
Now you were talking about putting a different stock on this gun for competition use.
Yep.
But then you also mentioned how this gun is a popular one for base class.
Yep.
Why would you want to put? If you put a different stock on this, you'd probably wind up going into open. Or something?
So
do you want to go into open or?
I like open. I mean, I dabble in a lot of different competitive shooting disciplines and hunting disciplines. I like to think of myself as like a slow burn, try to do it all slowly over time and kind of gradually get better rather than do one thing until it hurts and burn out and not like it anymore. So, so I have a nice PRS rifle. And so I've been enjoying that sport. And one of the things that we've been able to do is, because we have a range here, so we've been able to do a little friendly office competition on Wednesday evenings. So one of the competitions that we've been doing is like a precision rifle night here. But it got really old really fast, sending $50 of centerfire long-range ammunition into a 100-yard trap. Because like as fun as it was, and shooting 1.5, 2 MOA targets at 100 yards is no small feat off of different positions and barricades.
Okay, right.
But it just got expensive, and I think people were like, "Man, this hurts my wallet a lot," but we still want to hang out and do this. And so I was like, "Well, hey, we could start doing NRL 22," and so we were going to push that direction. So then with this rifle, I thought, I'm going to buy this, and I'm going to be super excited because it's going to be perfect for NRL 22. I'm probably going to put a nice optic on it because now that I work here, especially in engineering, I've become an optic snob.
Yes.
And so that's pretty much immediately going to put me out of base class because I'm spending at least the base class budget on my optic now.
Yep.
But I wanted this to kind of be able to do both things because I also hunt small game as a part of that slow burn. And so I thought, well, we'll do the Woodstock, CZ 457 varmint. So, but I'm going to throw a nice piece of glass on there so I can shoot NRL 22 with it if I want to, or I can, shoot small game with it. Well, before we got the NRL 22 stuff up and running, we had rabbit and squirrel season, and I fell in love with this rifle in this configuration, and now I don't want to take the stock off. And so if I was going to get another stock to switch over to NRL 22, I don't know. I kind of just want to leave this either to shoot NRL 22 as it is, lend it to somebody. There's constantly new people coming to try stuff. So, here, either I'll shoot this and you can take the other thing that's coming or whatever. We'll figure it out. But that's kind of why it's living in the configuration that it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been shooting with it recently in NRL 22 environments. I find it to be extremely capable. Even in this configuration, which is really encouraging to
like a different stock or a chassis would give you like an adjustable cheek piece, a little bit better bipod mounting solution, or
exactly.
a little bit better balance. Maybe
I'm an Arca Rail snob now too.
Oh, okay.
Gotta
You're all
clip
the
into the
snobs.
tripod. That's true. I have quickly gone from accessible to
Excessive.
Yeah, excessive. But
Similar word, different meaning.
yeah, well, I mean,
So
that's what it is.
speaking of the optic, then
Mm-hmm.
we'll spare people the waiting game, and maybe by now you've already heard of it too. But atop of this nice wood stocked varmint style rifle, you've got a kind of a more tactical looking optic.
Yes.
So that's part of what throws maybe somebody off or when they first give a quick glance at it. You have the new Strike Eagle 5-25 by 56 on top of this bad boy.
I do,
which
and
is
I
a
have
pretty sweet new optic.
I have been really seriously enjoying it, both in the in the woods and in the field. There have been some squirrels that have disappeared because of this Strike Eagle.
I was gonna say, man, this looks like one hell of a squirrel getter.
Yeah, no, I don't play in the squirrel woods. So
Now,
Seth ain't playing, dog.
to give
anymore.
the quick rundown on what this optic is all about for those listening and those watching who've been wondering what it is, you've got 34 millimeter tube, 5-25 by 56. You have an illuminated EBR-7C reticle.
Yep.
Parallax adjustment down to 15. I'm sure we'll get into that, being 22 podcast. Locking turrets.
Yep.
Integrated new rev stop zero stop system, which was pioneered by the Razor LHT. And it's a new first focal plane.
Yep.
And it's a new foray into the Strike Eagle line, which was previously just a couple of low power variables, the 1-6 and the 1-8, that are really popular. Probably, I'd say probably like our most sold scopes that we have.
Well, and I guess the only thing I'd add to that, Jim, is we're talking about this rifle scope in the context of 22 long rifle. It is by no means limited.
Oh my gosh!
to-
No,
to
thank you
22
for
long.
yes, because inevitably, what you say, if anybody asks you what's a great rimfire scope, then you suggest one. They say, "Oh, well, can it not handle 308?" So no, that's not what that means. People put Razor Gen 2s. I've seen it on NRL 22 rigs.
Yep.
Does that mean it's only rimfire rated? No. So, anyways, thank you for clearing the air on that.
Well,
it's a good thing to do.
It's the snobbery at work.
Yes.
I had
So, and these are going to retail for somewhere around $700.
$799, I believe.
$790. Okay.
yeah. 7 on the street.
Now, why does this scope make it? Why is this scope such a great NRL 22 scope?
So for all the things you mentioned, like in the instance that you have to do like long range precision shooting stuff, the Gen 2 Razor is like cream of the crop right now. I mean, you've got all of those features you mentioned, but it's at a significantly higher price point, and there's a couple of extra things in there. But this really has everything you need or really could want to shoot precision shooting without the couple of extra things that really justify the top tier price point. And so you've got locking turrets, so you're not going to accidentally change your zero off of a barricade, but they are also dialable turrets. So if you're going to be compensating for your 2 mils at 100 yards for your NRL 22 match, you have the ability to dial, or you have the ability to hold on the first focal plane reticle.
Yeah.
The zoom ratio magnification range, 5-25 is really close to 4.5-27. But with that 5x erector system, you get the important range, mag range, to do all of the stuff that you would do for precision rifle shooting. You've got adjustable parallax, and this adjustable parallax goes from 15 yards to infinity. So for the centerfire precision rifle competitor, you might you do a lot of practice so you get better, right? And so one of the ways you practice is dry fire. And so if you're in your house and you set up targets to dry fire, you might have a 15-yard hallway, or you might have something 15 yards taped to your bird feeder in the backyard, and you can adjust your parallax there. Yeah, right. Or you might shoot things off your bird feeder in your backyard.
I didn't shoot things off the bird feeder, but I do remember it had a very satisfying anti-squirrel thing on the bottom of it that if you shot made a good sound.
That's awesome.
With a Red Ryder BB.
Clang.
Yeah, respect.
Anyway.
But so being able to get down to 15 yards gives you the ability to focus on targets at that distance at higher magnifications. But yeah, so you can use that to dry fire or just shoot targets at 15 yards. So
What are usually the closest targets in an NRL 22 match?
probably 20 yards or so.
Okay, so you're well
But
within.
yeah, you're well within the range of this. So
That's nice,
Well, and
especially
then-
with positional shooting, where you may be
Yeah.
kind of in some compromised position where you
Yeah.
can't get the perfect
absolutely.
Yeah.
eye position.
And then I guess on the other side of that, like, what's the longest target in like an NRL match?
Yeah. So the NRL 22 organization sends out 5 stages every month. So every NRL 22 club, I guess, which is kind of a loosely defined word, gets these stages, and you run those stages. You score those, and then you submit those, and then you get ranked with everyone else. All of those stages are within 100 yards, which keeps it super accessible.
'Kay.
Because then, yeah, everyone who's got a 100-yard range can run an NRL 22 match. But they also provide a stage like template so that you can write your own stages that go further than that. So you can have your own like club match where you're shooting stuff at 350 yards with a 22, which is pretty bananas. But I mean, you might be shooting stuff at 350 on whatever bonus stage, and it just gives the club the flexibility to cater to their equipment and their consumers too, right? Sure. So the cool thing about like NRL is pretty rigid. I mean, it's super competitive, and you have people that are there to win. And the same could be true for NRL 22, but I think the general air is a lot more friendly and welcoming. Like if you're the guy who's like, I am here to crush everyone at this match.
Yeah.
You're not going to make a lot of friends in an NRL 22 match.
No.
So, just because it's more welcoming, I think you can do. They're more lenient on the rule set. So you could have a 22 pistol stage. You could have a run and gun NRL 22 stage.
Yeah.
And it's all kind of allowed within the rules because they're the bonus stages that don't technically count for anyone in your club.
Yeah.
So you're able to kind of do what you want with your community.
And speaking of, longer shots and whatnot with
Yeah.
the 22, so that would require adjustment.
Absolutely.
So that was one thing that I thought was pretty neat about this scope, having a 34 mil tube.
Yep.
It's got over 100 minutes, and I know 31
mils.
of adjustment, which is a lot.
It's more than you probably need shooting 22s.
I mean, that's a ton. That's getting up there in Razor territory. I mean, the Razor Gen 2, I want to say, is somewhere around there. What's it at?
About the same.
About the same.
Yep.
And then the Razor Gen 1 5-20, which was, is still sort of the elevation adjustment range king.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Has
30,
125.
36 mils, 125.
125 MOA at 36 mils. So, I mean, it's very close to that, and at half the price of that scope.
Yep.
So which is super cool.
When you're talking about shooting 300 yards
Yep.
with a 22, how much adjustment are you using there? Like, what would you have to dial up?
A copious amount.
Yes.
I can run some math here real quick.
I don't know off the top of my head.
The hardest part with the 22 long rifle long range stuff is trying to calculate a BC, because it's not often, it's not often posted, and the stuff that is posted is pretty all over the map.
And is it like even a G1 or a G7?
It could be a G1 profile, but most of them are like right around 0.08 to 0.12 maybe.
They're not very efficient.
Yeah, so
They're fun.
Well, we're just going to set this at a 0.1 G1 BC. So bad. And I'm gonna,
Translation bad.
I'm going to set a muzzle velocity of 1080. We're going to do a bullet diameter of 0.223, bullet weight of 40 grains, zero distance of 100, scope height of 1.9.
What calculator are you using there?
Just a mobile-based one. It's called iSnipe.
Okay.
While Ryan's doing this, Jim, and I'm gonna throw a car reference in there for you. Sometimes you talk about like, you could have like a really fast car, or you could drive a slow car fast.
Oh yeah, fastest car in the world. You know what that is, right?
Rental car, baby.
Rental car. That's right.
Jim told me that joke, and I LOL'd multiple times throughout the day. It's funny because it's true.
But
I feel that's kind of almost an analogy there.
It's more fun to drive a slow car fast than it is to drive a fast car slow.
Yeah, and then you've got these 22s that are you shooting them 1,000 yards? No, but you're shooting them 100 yards, and
Yeah, it's a good time.
Or 100 or 2,
stretching
3,
it.
4, 5, 6. You know, like
Yeah.
You're putting it. You're stretching it to its max and staying within reasonable limits of what most people can achieve at most ranges.
right.
You know,
Perfect storm.
It is. It is. I like that a lot. And another thing too. Speaking of, while Ryan's getting into the beautiful mind stuff over there, regarding adjustment. So this has the zero stop. The rev stop zero system. Yep. And it really is. It's a zero stop. It's unique. It's super easy to set. It's just like one piece that you put in the turret yourself. I mean, it couldn't be simpler.
If you know righty tighty, lefty loosey, you can set this stop.
Yeah. And it does take up right now a little bit of the adjustment range. So if you get zeroed from your zero position, you wouldn't necessarily have the full range of adjustment there, but still you get 18 mils.
Yeah, which
is a lot.
It's beyond usable for like 90% of 22, but also PRS stuff.
I've never had to dial 18 mils for anything.
No,
I guess that's
I mean, when I shot a 6.5
Creedmoor
Creedmoor at 1,200 yards, I think it was just at like 12.1 mils.
Yep.
Right.
And so, anyway, but just for reference for folks out there, I mean, if you're trying to shoot a bazillion yards with this thing, it does take up a little bit of the available.
Well, and I guess that's part of the reason why I was asking Ryan this question, just kind of put things in perspective. Like people are like, oh, that might limit my travel, but really, what does that mean? You know,
Right. So what are you showing there, Ryan?
So I'm going to make a correction to the data I put in here. The CCI target 40 grain bullet has a posted BC of 0.149. So we kicked it up a little bit.
Goodness.
Yeah, whereas a lot of the other stuff is like 0.1, 0.11. Anyway, so with 100 yard zero, and I went with the environmentals today at Vortex and a 5 mile an hour.
You mean rainy as heck with a chance of virus?
Yeah, right. I set it for our elevation and all that stuff at 200 yards with a 100 yard zero. You will require 5.2 mils of adjustment.
My gosh, that's what you need. 6.5 Creed, you need that for 600 yards, if I'm not mistaken.
The 10 mil mark, which is kind of the magic number with a lot of the 6.5 ammo, comes into play at 280 yards.
You're not even to 300 yet.
No.
And that's what's required at 1,000.
At 500 yards, you require 26.75 mils of adjustment.
Okay, so if
you
you're
have
shooting out to 500, you may want to take that zero stop out.
Interesting.
But chances are, if you're dialing that much, you're probably paying attention to it.
Yeah. Yep. So where it gets really wild is the wind. So we talk about when you're holding a mil of wind, like we shoot a lot at our 1,000 yard range. And you know, if you've got a 5 mile an hour shift at 1,000 at that range, the way that the intersecting and differing degrees of wind, a mil to a mil and a half is a pretty tall wind call for a lot of things. You require 1 mil of wind hold with a 5 mile an hour shift at 210 yards. So it compounds very quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it shows you your mistakes in a very, very condensed distance. And it behaves much the same as it would if you were stretching your regular centerfire out to long and extra long range.
Yeah. Now, one thing actually we should note, you can shoot with this scope out to 500 yards with the zero stop installed because your reticle, I'm on 12X right now, which at 500 yards, you don't need more than 12X to see the target well. And the reticle is perfectly visible, and it goes down to 10 mils. So you have an additional, in theory, if you add on the reticle there that you can hold over at 18 mils, you could go to 28 mils.
Before you even pull a zero stop out.
Bam.
So
fun fact, you impact a 500-yard target at 655 feet per second with 38 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, or 38 foot-pounds of projectile energy.
Just enough to pierce the rump of Mark's friend.
Yeah. through the blue jean.
I think it's still in him.
Is it really?
Yeah.
My goodness.
What? That's awesome.
I
Aren't
can't
they
remember.
red?
That's the story. This is the story he told.
Yep.
Wow. What a story.
It is a heck of a lot of fun. Flight time, bullet flight time, that's another fun part of this. 1.85 seconds.
Okay.
So you pull the trigger quick enough, you can get multiple rounds downrange before impact, and then they all go ding, ding, ding.
The time of flight was at what distance?
500 yards.
At 500 yards.
1.85 seconds. That's an eternity.
That is.
Yep.
1000.
That's a lot of time for wind to impart and gravity to impart some
My gosh.
some effect on that.
Jerry Michelik's rattled off like 12 rounds,
Yep.
15 rounds
Yep.
at that point.
Yep.
That would be
So
really
Hey,
interesting to like watch on video.
At Jerry, that's your next quick shooting challenge. We challenge Jerry Mitchell to see how many shots he can get with a 22 at 500 yards before the first one hits.
Yep.
Yes.
I like that.
I challenged
fun.
Jerry because I couldn't do it.
good person to challenge then, huh?
Yeah. That's cool stuff.
Yeah. Other thing to point out, it is lighter than like our Gen 2 Razor because there's not as much stuff going on in the turret.
Okay.
It comes in just a hair over 30 ounces. So especially if you are going to make a dual purpose rifle out of it and run it through the woods, you've got all of your big scope long range features that you could want at 15 ounces lighter than the Gen 2 Razors are.
And being illuminated too, then when you back it
Yeah.
down to 5, you can still
Yep.
see it in the timber and stuff
Yeah.
like that when
Yeah,
you're
it's
trying to hunt
pretty nice.
squirrels. And
The other time I found the illumination to be really helpful, I have a 4.5 27 and I almost never use my illumination just because I haven't had much of a need to. But when I was shooting that like NRL 22 targets here, our trap at our range is like a dark gray black.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're shooting a gray circle that was previously painted white until you spattered it with lead for 3 hours, then it's really difficult to find the target without the illuminated reticle. And so just boop, bumped it on. I got a red reticle, super high contrast, and I just pounding targets.
Nice.
So,
Now, and for those environmentals, now, are you setting that reticle at its top end? Are you setting the reticle to stun, or just a couple? Just a couple.
I don't know. There, depending on lighting conditions, just like with the first focal plane, like a Razor 1-6 or low power variable is what I was trying to say. Like our 1-6 or 1-10, if you set it too bright for the room, it lets you know by ballooning and being or a red dot even by being kind of obnoxious. And so I wear glasses. I had an astigmatism. My glasses mostly sorted out, but I found that by dialing the light down to where it was actually useful for the thing I'm trying to do is where it's optimal.
Yeah,
so
just
I'm
get
not
to the point where it's not obnoxious.
Yeah, I'm not a dial it up to 11 all the time with my illumination guy because that's not where it's appropriate. So that's why we have a setting 7. Or else it would be an on-off.
That is
I
indeed.
have a question for Seth on topic, but kind of divergent. Have you ever heard of 22 Calibri?
The smallest cartridge in the
Is
world.
that just how you spell caliber in Britain?
No. So I should say the Super Calibris, not the Calibri.
Oh, okay.
But that same company that makes the 60 grain sniper subsonic, they make a cartridge called the Calibri. And on the box, it's kind of a rainbow color. Yeah, Mark's got it right there.
I own some of these as well, and they are also great for urban pest control.
So what's really special about it, they don't have any powder in the case.
Oh, yeah, okay. These ones. Yep.
Yeah, so they've got a hopped up priming system.
Yep.
And I want to say it's a 29 grain bullet at 510 feet per second.
Yep.
So because I know my father will never listen to this podcast, I don't think he knows what a podcast is. I used to shoot 22 Calibris in my basement.
I was just about to add, I don't recommend shooting them indoors.
But I used to shoot them in my basement.
Not recommended, but I did it.
And so I was wondering if at home yet you've talked your wife into allowing you to practice with Super Calibri.
I bet you could fashion your own trap. One of those snail style.
Oh, you totally could.
You can buy them. They make a
Big enough for your basement?
yeah. They make an in-home 22 long rifle. I think Champion makes it.
Yeah, I don't know.
My buddy
who it
had
is.
one.
Yeah.
But don't mess
buddy
with
Mike
your
had
TV.
100%.
I can promise you, I've
my
never
next basement.
right.
around this.
I've not punched a hole in my father's drywall with a Super Calibri round. Yellow Pages book works really good too, and they're spectacularly accurate.
Yep.
So
I have not done that, but I have.
I guess I know what you're doing this weekend.
I'm trying to think, what's the velocity on those things?
I want to say it's 510 feet.
It's
per
not
second.
a lot.
No, if I remember
Oh,
correctly.
did I steal it?
Pushing
Is it on
pellet
this one,
gun
Mark?
territory there.
Yeah, with a heavier projectile.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets its.
Oh, that's true.
Its snooze.
That's cool.
They're neat. And so the Super Calibris being the full length case will feed out of a lot of, like you could single feed a Ruger 1022. Whereas you really can't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you really can't single feed a 22 short out of them unless you heavily modify your magazines or you buy the special magazines for them.
Yeah.
But they're a neat projectile, or neat round. Yeah, you should put that one on your radar. Be fun to see your testing. Bring tri-fire to a whole new level.
Did they make a 22 where it just shoots salt at flies?
The bug assault?
Yeah, but like better and cooler.
Yeah, so they make the birdshot, which is usually a number 10 or a number 12.
Right, which baffles me. Does that actually have an effective use?
Yeah. So in modern guns, not as much as you'd think.
No, I know. I've seen that. I just wonder.
But there
can't imagine what it would actually.
There's two styles to those. There's the capsule and the crimp, and I've actually found the crimp ones are better.
I didn't mean to yell at you.
I'm so used to it, Jim. I didn't even notice.
It's just how they communicate.
It's like being at home.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
brutal.
Mark will not be shooting 22 Calibri in his basement.
He doesn't have a basement.
Some time ago, Marlin and Winchester and Remington, all three made a smooth bore only 22 long rifle, and they were either bolt or pump. And a lot of times they were referred to as garden guns. The idea was you had mice or rabbits or voles or moles or any number of small creatures in your garden that were eating your vegetables. But you didn't want to take out the 45-70 to take care of them. So they made these bolt action or slide action, pump action 22s that did not have rifling, and you shot the birdshot cartridge or the birdshot cases out of them.
That is amazing.
What is really amazing is that with the Remington 572 Fieldmaster smoothbore that had a bead front, just like a shotgun would, they used to have a game they called Mosquito. So we think of the shotgun game Skeet, and then we think of Mosquito, and
my lord,
they called it Mosquito. And they had these teeny tiny little clay pigeons. And then they made an adapter for Ritz crackers. And they have a tiny little thrower. And it was a gallery game, just like we talked about earlier. And you used that pump action Remington and you shot flying Ritz crackers or these tiny little mesquite clays.
Can you do this indoors as well?
That's what it was done with. Because the shot that it shot is like 10 shot or 12 shot. It's like, so 12.
If you just have a heavy curtain.
Yeah, pretty much. So, or like a stiff breeze, even probably. Like you
just a fan facing you.
Was that a ricochet? No, stiff breeze.
To like scale number 12 shot, I want to say it's 2,200 pellets per ounce. It's like sand. We used to slip them into the trap pouches of our trap coaches when we were in high school, and you couldn't break a bird at the 16-yard line with them. So when you shoot them out of these, obviously their effective range is pretty nil. But you can, if you get handy enough, I think you could probably peel a yellow jacket out of the sky.
Yeah, I don't know.
That is interesting.
I don't know, kind of switching gears, but along the same premise of like these guys here with kind of the blue plastic encasing. They made them for 44s as well.
Yep.
It just didn't seem that, like, shot one at a grouse one time.
Useless.
And I'm talking about, I want to say, 5 feet?
Yeah, useless.
And it's not like, crippled him and lost him. Like, I don't think, like, he wasn't hurt.
Yeah.
He was just kind of like, what?
I don't know.
Man.
Was that?
It's like pocket sand. It's just like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Surprise! I have a similar story with a jackrabbit. I went antelope hunting. Was the second time I ever went antelope hunting. My buddy and I went out, and we were positive we were going to get inundated with rattlesnakes, like all over the place. Because you're in the American West, and it's kind of still hot out. So he went out. He's like, "Well, what are we going to do about snakes?" And so we didn't want to buy the snake boots that go up to your knees.
Right, that's just uncomfortable.
But we both had 38 special snub nose revolvers, and then we bought a bunch of snake shot. And, we had small game licenses too. And here's this jackrabbit. And we're thinking, this is going to be perfect. We just use a 38 revolver. It's like shooting a 410 at him. We're going to get a rabbit for the pot. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to have a great night. And if anybody listening has never run into a jackrabbit, a lot of times they don't just bust. They just kind of like fold their ears back and pretend that they're a rock. And you can get pretty close to them. So he sneaks up. He was shooting a Ruger SP-101, short-barreled revolver, a little guy. And he sneaks up through the sagebrush on this jackrabbit. And, of course, I'm watching. I'm like, this is perfect. This is going to be awesome. And same thing. He's like feet away. And he cocks back, and I'm like, oh, cool, we're going to have dinner. Pow. And the rabbit didn't move. And I'm like,
man.
I can't believe he missed. Because it's like 10 feet away. And cocks back, pow. And finally the rabbit kind of like looked at him, like acknowledged that he was there. And was like, what are you doing, man? And then like just kind of hopped off. And then he kind of like looked at me like defeated. Like there were blanks in that gun or something like that. And their effectiveness is very subjective. Yeah. There's better ways to do it, because I do know guys that load centerfire revolver cartridges with shot.
Okay.
And they can peel a grouse off the trail at pretty considerable distances. It's not those.
I was gonna say, don't persecute me on that one, because it was one shot, one time.
And you were disheartened
opportunity.
afterwards, right? You got to get the crimped ones. The crimped ones we found were way better out of the smoothbore guns. My buddy's grandpa had one of those Remington pumps with the smoothbore, and the crimped ones patterned, like you could do stuff with them.
Really?
Yep. Made a very, very good English Sparrow inside the barn, inside the garage.
What about, if you are putting it through a rifled barrel, any risk to...
Not to the gun, but it's going to spin your shot column, that diminutive, tiny little shot column, and you're going to have a terrible pattern dispersion.
Right. And that could have been as much our problem as anything else.
Correct. You're already shooting sand at whatever you're shooting at, and then now the pattern dispersion is terrible.
Right.
Yeah. The versatility of the long rifle.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep.
It has done everything.
You can get tracers for them.
What?
Yeah.
Regular people can get tracers
Oh, yeah.
for them?
Was it piney wood ammunition?
Yeah, I think for Pine Mountain.
Yeah.
Pine,
Piney
yeah,
Mountain,
some pine
22 tracers.
pine themed.
I want
company.
$22 that blows up when it hits something.
I don't know of any incendiary 22s,
No,
but
I
I'm
don't
sure
think
with
it
a little
exists.
bit of basement chemistry, we could make that happen.
That's probably not legal. Do not try it
Off
home.
the record.
Only you.
I don't know how to make it so Seth didn't say that.
Right.
Be a
right.
12-second long beep in the podcast.
Yeah, anyway. Okay, so 22LR. I have a feeling we have a lot more that we can talk about 22LR. Some other future podcasts. We want to hear you guys' thoughts. If by now Trent Brenny is still listening, I'm sure he enjoyed this one.
Yep.
Hey, Trent.
I feel guilty sitting in this seat instead of Trent being here.
Yeah,
but
big 22 fan, big time listener as well. This
I
is a
wonder if
shout
he
out to
knows
him.
about centerfire cartridges.
Centerfire 22s?
No, just centerfire in general.
Oh, just in general?
Does
he
Trent
know
know
they
that they
exist?
make that?
Trent, do you? That's
Comment.
a good question.
Comment below.
Comment.
Yeah.
Anyway, but also let us know what other 22 stuff we should talk about. With that being said,
From rats to elephants, I'm surprised we actually invented other cartridges, but we did. Thank goodness.
yeah, who needs them?
that's right.
So do it all.
Okay. Well, we'll see you next time. And everybody stay healthy and stay safe out there. It's weird when you do a podcast and it's going to release in a month and you don't know what's going to happen in a month.
Everything's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be great.
Yep.
All right. Hope everything's great. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, man. Trent.
What a guy.
Every time we do a podcast, I want to do something new, and that thing today is smoothbore 22 Mesquite.
Have you seen how expensive those guns are?
No.
So-
Never mind. I'm out. I'm already out.
The my hunting partner.
I was in. I'm out.
My hunting partner had one. He traded it to a gentleman. He called it his butterfly gun.
The problem is, this was all pre-internet when people did cool stuff.
If you're shooting butterflies,
People say
you
cool
just had to
stuff and there's
shoot-
no
Yeah,
consequences.
exactly. Because
Nope.
no one was going to record it and put it on
I don't
the
think
internet.
he
digital
actually.
trail.
I don't think he
Exactly.
actually zapped a butterfly. I know he did mention several times that dragonflies on the wing and bumblebees.
I shot a dragonfly with my Daisy 880 at about 20 yards
Got it.
out of it.
Did it make a sound when you hit like a?
No, I hit him in the wing. I've told the story before, but it's like my claim to fame. But yeah, it's probably about 20 yards and shot him out of the air, and he just goes. Zzz, 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 zzz.
Made a helicopter out
Way
of
to
it.
go.
I'm gonna look up a Remington 5.7.
What I'm going to do is create a series of drones, and they all have smoothbore 22 turrets
There you go.
with those rounds.
That's
and then I want to
quasi-legal.
have them have mosquito sensing technology and then
Oh.
fly around my yard and just
Wow.
pop.
Talk about
Mosquitoes.
a total misuse of government spending. We have been using this for war activities this whole time, and we could have
Yes.
been using drone swarms to control
Anti-mosquito drone
mosquitoes.
swarms. Can you imagine walking out
Yep.
in your backyard and there's just the sky is just black. The sky is just black with drones
This
that are
is
just
looking like War of the Worlds on mosquitoes.
So
You walk out in your yard and there's one that's trying to get a mosquito in your house and just running into your windows.
here's an unfired 572 smoothbore.
Oh, that's good.
This is the
Completely outrageous.
BDL too, so the deluxe stock bead barrel. New in box, $800.
Let me see it.
That's actually not as bad as I thought.
No,
it was.
I
because
would
it
do it.
knew they were
For new in
400.
box?
I want
Yeah.
to say they're 440.
So they don't make them anymore.
No, they're horrible failure.
I'd do it.
When my buddy's grandpa won one at a Ducks Unlimited banquet, and he was shooting it home, he called me and he's like, "This thing sucks. I can't get this 22 to shoot at all."
Oh my God, he was.
Shooting long rifles out of it. So we get over there. It's like, Fred, this is a smoothbore. The hell's that mean? It's for shooting shot shells. Well, this is no good. We got to the point where if you were at the right distance, you could tag an English sparrow on the wing,
With the
What
shot
kind of
shells or
what
with
kind
the
of
22
distance?
like from no further than here to the rack, and it pretty much had to be either oncoming or going away
Okay.
For all of
because
your-
the leads are. Well, we never figured out the leads.
Well, it's tough to lead something that's flying so erratically too.
Yeah.
I mean, they change direction.
And when you pop.
That's another bird that, I mean, they can be a pest if they're like in your boat garage, which I don't have, by the way. Someday, Jim.
In your imaginary
Yes.
boat
In my
garage.
imaginary boat garage, or we used
So
to get them.
convenient.
They'd want to live
I
in
always
like a
pictured
vent
boat
of
garage
our
there.
house, you know.
Yep.
But I like them for some reason. At the same, I really like that bird. Other than the fact that like if they become like a nuisance in,
Yeah.
in some one of your structures.
Don't
I
they do
guess.
bad things to other songbirds though?
Yes, they're nest
Yeah.
robbers. Here is a.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. I was thinking swallows.
Oh,
I was thinking of swallows.
Yeah, we don't.
Swallows are the ones
Swallows
that
are
eat
great.
bugs too.
Yeah.
You can't shoot those.
Yeah.
no.
So this is an example
Sparrows.
of a.
Yes,
of a
English sparrows.
Remington-
Sorry.
Of a
Kill 'em all.
Remington,
Wipe them.
and a Mosquito thrower with six.
Look at that thing.
With 6 pitch targets. You have to get the Ritz Cracker adapter though.
That
Of
seems
course.
to be the.
Sure, one could be made.
Boy, that's God, I love a Ritz cracker though. That'd be hard to.
Just get the knockoff like Save Ritz ones.
So when are we gonna do my patented 3D
Aldi
printed
brand Ritz
22 LR?
So I was just thinking about this when you, or right after you said that. Have you seen the new copper printer? What do they call that thing? The Forge?
I don't know. There's
I
a
can't-
lot. There's a lot of different metal 3D printers now.
This is like the new like desktop for
Oh, sure.
at-home computer builders,
Yeah.
and you feed it powdered copper,
Interesting.
and it prints complex.
Like circuitry.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I
And
could see
when
why
you
how
said
do
that,
trace that way.
the first thing that went through my head is, oh, Delrin's probably fine. You could probably shoot Delrin down a rifled barrel at those velocities, but it's too
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
But if you had a solid copper projectile and you 3D printed it, you could get a slippery ass bullet. You could do a pretty good job. Do some interesting weighting, some weight forward design.
I thought he was going after a polymer case.
You probably
And
do
you
that
were,
too.
you were going polymer projectile.
It's too light.
Yeah. Right.
No,
That's.
I'm thinking.
I say we print the whole damn
Yeah.
thing.
I don't know what I was going for.
I'm thinking
I just
high
said 3D printing.
BC. So I was talking to the guy who runs Ely's reloading shop at SHOT this year, and he was like, "Oh no, it's a real great thing." He's like, "You can buy primed cases if you'd like to load your own." And I'm thinking, when you said that, I was like, "Oh my God, if we got a copper printer and primed Ely cases."
Yeah.
And some, I don't even know what powder you use for Rimfire.
I don't know either.
It's
at this
probably
point.
European Rimfire powder. And we geeked out on that. Could you imagine?
It would be interesting
All
to
I gotta
market to the
say,
survivalist community.
if-
Be like, get yourself a 3D printer.
If you could get,
Guess what you
if
could
somehow
do.
Ian caught wind of all this, there would be a 1,000-yard 22 competition.
But who would ever let him know?
Probably.
What's that?
Who would ever tell Ian
I don't know.
about such a thing?
Could you imagine? He's like, yes, yeah, I think I could. Yeah. It just disappeared. Come back and just be
Voila.
Is this what you're talking about?
You take the start making turn projectiles, except you make it completely hollow
in the back.
and so you can seat a really long bullet inside the case, because rather than it being heeled, the heel is super long, and then you've got all of the powder that goes up in it, so you just drill a hole in the back of a turned projectile, and you could get way longer bearing surface and probably change your sectional density so that you could actually stabilize at longer distances.
You
Whoa,
did
whoa,
it.
whoa, 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 whoa. Are you saying that the powder would
Pat-
be inside
Pat-
the bullet?
Yep.
And then it ignites and yes, I get
Yep.
what you're saying.
Oh my God.
So
Oh my
wait,
God.
are you increasing the powder charge then?
You could.
You could.
Because
or
you've got.
depends how long you make it.
Okay,
right? I mean,
so what if
I'm all
Seth.
about increasing the powder charge.
I didn't think I was going to get into ELR 22 today,
It's not a metaphor, Jim. Okay.
but we have a lathe here, and I'm really curious.
No, here's what you do. You take your case design.
Yeah, we used to make optics, but now we lathe
Did
22
you ever see?
projectiles.
Did you listen to the muzzleloader episode when we talked about?
I believe so.
Okay.
But,
So,
oh yeah, because you had your Savage
yeah.
in
Did,
here.
did
Yeah,
you ever
yeah.
see
Throwing
the
out words. 3D printer.
modules that my
Oh,
buddy
dives.
makes?
The what now?
The modules, the priming modules.
No.
So they are like a case head with a long stem on them.
Oh.
Where's that piece of paper there? Can I color on the back?
Yeah,
of it?
Brian.
You have a
Pen.
pencil? Oh,
Oh,
please. I've got one.
Well, I'm not gonna let anybody borrow. It's the only one I got right now.
We've already.
I don't wanna
I've
have to
already
burn it.
illustrated on this one. Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
So you have your case head that is 22 long rifle diameter. This is set up for a Remington 6.5 primer because that's the one that you use for 218Bs and
Okay, sure.
shit like that. You have
Same as a 22 Hornet primer?
yeah.
Okay.
You have the stem, like you state. We load it with tight group in here, okay?
Wait, what is the stem?
And then over the top, like you said, the bullet.
Yep.
That is the same OAL as a 22 long rifle.
Yep.
You fire it out. I guess you'd have to have a little space back here to let the extractor hook on.
Yeah.
Out comes your case, which you can reload.
So what are we
It
going to do?
reminds me of when kids had those rockets that got like
Yes.
you put it over the air cannon thing and you just go
That's
thunk
exactly
and it
what
just
this
poof.
is. So I guess the concern I have is
Yeah,
now
where's the pump?
we've got an ignition system that's striking the rim.
Oh, you can reset those.
So
You get to
you
center.
have to get a modified like
Yeah.
centerfire adapter.
Yep.
Okay. So you just start cranking out new bolts
They already make them.
for like CZs and stuff.
Yeah.
We're well on our way to
Patented.
changing the world here.
All you do is
So-
it's a different firing pin, and then you pilot a hole in the center of the
Yeah.
deal. And so the firing pin, instead of it looking like a conventional rimfire firing pin like this, that comes out of the top.
Yep.
This part is cropped. This
And
part
they're
is
just-
extended.
Yeah, sure. Yep. So one of the things about 22 that would make this
Or
possible,
we offset the primer. Nah, it's going to be hard then.
that would be hard
'Cause
because
you'd have to orient
load
them.
yeah. Unless the primer was basically the same diameter as a case.
It's the
But I don't
20
know.
50 BMG primer.
And then you
Can't
wouldn't
set
need
it
any
off.
powder at all.
Right.
Or the ability to set off. But one of the things that we didn't talk about that's a cool thing about 22s is it's what's called a heeled bullet. Yeah. So the bullet is the same diameter as the case, which is pretty unconventional. And so the amount of bullet that's sitting in the case is actually kind of like recessed and cut in. And so we could change the length of this pretty much as we want, which is why he was talking earlier about those subs that are like a 22 short case with just a really long projectile. We're basically doing that, but
22 long rifle.
I might
center.
cry. That's really exciting. But
My
we
God.
could make super short cases and put a really long projectile, and you just need to have enough pressure that you would increase the bearing surface. I guess the problem is, like, it's simultaneously a leap forward and you're going back a good bit too, because I'm thinking of like the expanding skirt on a Monet ball.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what you would have to do. I don't know if you would want to draw the pressure out long enough that you still have like a lot of burn with a slow burning powder. I don't know what you'd have to do, but I kind of like where we're going.
Seth, you got to be on this more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like as much of a nerd as Ryan,
I mean,
which is awesome.
I'm still learning to be a nerd even more. But yeah, I was lucky enough to.
You have a degree in nerd.
It's true. Yep. I can't even say it's hung up anywhere. That's how much of a nerd I am. I think it's in the bottom of my gun safe.
Really?
Yeah, it's just in there.
Oh, that's interesting.
I
Yeah,
figured
don't
you
know
like
where mine is
digitized
either.
it and somehow uploaded it into you or something like.
Yeah, it was actually an IV drip.
I ate it.
What?
Yeah, no.
Right, your
just
degree?
My degree. Yep.
Oh, I lost mine.
Yeah. Just kidding. But yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to work for a gun shop while I was in college, so I had 4
Got
years
it.
behind the counter.
Got it.
And so I sold Vortex stuff before I came here. And
Oh, nice.
So I was a Vortex customer. I sold Vortex stuff, and now I get to be here.
Nice.
So I've kind of seen,
Full circle.
yeah, the whole customer experience.
Right on.
That's awesome.
So
You are the
love this
customer.
stuff. Yeah.
I will buy a
all
Savage
the
Mark
customers.
II that we can absolutely destroy.
What if I told you I have one? that I've been like, do I give this to my sister?
Did they just become
Or
best
do I
friends?
just-
No,
Yeah.
no, not to your
So,
sister, Seth.
yeah.
This is for R&Ds.
The bolts on the Savage Mark IIs are super simple too.
Yeah,
I could
just
totally see why you.
Is
have
this
a
another
similar
thing that we
feature
should
to
draw and patent with Eddie?
This is like this is some serious day drinking level engineering. I think this is when
I have no idea if
this
this
is
would
when
work
you've been
at
in
all.
isolation for so long.
Yep.
You're like, what if we had a car that ran a waterman like that kind of thing? What if we completely destroyed the affordability of 22 long rifle?
What if the car drove you?
Yep.
Oh man.
I feel like I'm looking at the drawing and someone said, but what about the case? There is no case.
Alternatively,
Actually, that's a good point.
a Nordic.
What's extraction look like?
You could work it out. You'd have
You
to
could do dual extractors.
Figure it out
Right.
later.
The Bergara. I don't know if you've seen the new B14 bolt.
Yes.
Well, yeah, Tuss has one, but it's dual extractors. And what I found was really interesting about that is it's actually just one drilled hole, and then a shared coil spring between both. And so
Oh.
there's roll pins kind of in the middle that it
That was
hinges off
clever.
of. I was like, yeah, it's just like a one part. Pretty clever. But you could have dual extraction, and then if your ejector,
What do they hold them in with?
hmm?
So there's just a coil spring between the two. I'm assuming they're like 1022 style extractors.
Yep. So they're, yeah, and then there's just roll pins through the top. So it
Oh,
hinges
and then they
here.
have a coil spring in the
Yep,
back.
in the back. Yep, and so it'll grab a hold of the case head. And so the front is shaped such that it will accept the cartridge when feeding. But then, yeah, there's just a spring here that's shared in one channel.
Well,
between
that's
the two.
easy, right?
Mhm.
So that's easy.
Super
So
easy.
then you've got your rim, your flange
Yep.
there for that. You have a part of this case
Getting so
that
excited, my
goes forward.
Throat is
You
going.
better not have Corona.
I have not had a Corona since I was in Mexico.
Okay. So that comes back here. Looks just like my buddy Luke's ignition module. This is your
Yep.
powder column. So it's
Yep.
like the Remington hypersonic wad. Have you ever seen that?
No.
They use a powder column of Magnum rifle primer or Magnum rifle powder to initiate your slow burn for pressure, and then it ignites a fast burn powder. It's two different powder blends. The
And what's the application for this? A muzzleloader?
Remington shotgun.
Okay. Oh,
1,800
sure,
foot
that's
per
fine.
second shot shells. Yeah. So that is what it looks
Wow.
like. So this is the profile of your brass
Yeah, that's-
piece.
I mean, and if you can extract and eject a 22 short, you should be able to do it with whatever bearing surface you have there.
Right.
And
why not make it the same length? Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. With
Yeah.
with respect to where the extractor engages
Yep.
the case. Huh.
so, in terms of interface between, because right now the projectile is just floating, right? So in terms of interface here, do we add just another skirt shoulder? So we're
Oh, sure. It's real thin so that it
Yeah.
does act like that Manet ball. You get your.
Or, yeah, I guess you could do it as a healed bullet the way it is right now, or just take it the other way and just turn the smaller diameter and have it fully rest on the skirt. So then you just feed the entire thing. But then, so you're still head spacing off the rim, so that's good. You've got that in your favor. But yeah, you've just got to figure out what pressure curve results in bearing surface that would let this fly. Man, you'd have to spin it faster too, wouldn't you? Because it's longer.
Yeah,
But-
Green Hill formula.
So I wonder what, like how far
chicken
would we
tenders.
have to drill up here
What,
I don't know.
What do
in
you mean
order
chicken
to get
tenders, Jim?
the correct
You have some?
sectional density?
Oh, that's what smells so good?
And that, I guess we can determine our powder column that way. Would it be weird to reload backwards? You take your bullet, you set it in a press, fill the bullet with powder, and then seat the case on top?
The
Super
bullet
weird.
would be...
Yeah, the projectile is upside down.
You
and
could
have
probably
to
just
fill the
you could probably
projectile
just
with-
like hand seat, or do you have like a small?
like a priming tool, basically.
Yeah, almost like a. You just put like an interrupter thread down, and you just cam it in place, and just enough to. You'd have to have like some little locking feature back here to engage and clip that on.
What an interesting
I mean,
concept.
it's a turned projectile, so we can put whatever we want in there as long as we have a boring bar that's small enough. The worst part about this is we could do it on a little desktop lathe that's like this big.
Like a jeweler's.
Yeah,
lathe. You sit
exactly.
there with your like
Just-
monocle. And
Yep, and I've got these giant coolant feed lines coming through, just spraying it all. But there will be no reason to.
Here's what I love. An hour ago, both you guys go, if you're absolutely insane, you reload 22 LR. An hour later, we're completely revamping the 22 LR.
What if we developed our own and made it on machines?
the 22,
And ruined it.
The 22 ELR.
I'll just put hand sanitizer on my hands.
I'm good, thank you.
I don't know. I'll have to make one of those happen, I guess. It's part of the process. Brain food.
So the Nordic 22. When we built that, we went
The full
with
auto one?
Well, full auto or the semi-auto. We went with a centralized firing pin system, and then we actually offset how everything would set up for the barrel, so that you wouldn't have to deal with this goofy ass weird firing pin. So the firing pin still travels down the center of the barrel, or center of the bolt. Excuse me. You could just make a barrel, because you would need a barrel with the proper twist. You're right. With the bearing surface that long, you're going to have to increase the twist from 1 in 16 or 1 in 20, whatever the hell they are, to like 1 in 12, 1 in 10.
Yeah.
New barrel.
I mean, what's
We'll have to make those too.
Well, the projectiles are still too small, so never mind. But I don't know. It's weird. There's no way
What
to
about
tell.
the barrel that twists the 60 grainer?
The issue is the firing pin. You either have to do a new firing pin, which on like a Savage type bolt would be really easy because the firing
You
pin's
just stick it in the
accessible from
channel.
the top.
Yeah.
Pilot a new hole, let the firing pin down. pick
I
up the
thought you guys
center.
were already assuming that. Sorry. I got ahead of you.
A lot of you guys can just be assholes to each other in here. It's pretty, pretty
Uh-huh.
nice. Yeah. It's like, I guess
Just
that's a
like
Vortex
MPD.
wide thing. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Just infinite harassment. So I'll be honest. I was pretty shocked when I got the invitation to be on the podcast because
Why?
I thought that my whole claim to Vortex fame would be my mother mailing you those.
Dude, it was the greatest
Stupid-
thing ever.
The
oven
oven
mitts?
mitts.
They're awesome.
Yep.
I used to burn my fingers
Yep.
so many times on that stupid thing because I was trying to use paper towels
Yep.
as oven mitts.
She
Or she wrote
every
me a
time
note
she
and
gets a
everything.
shout out. She's super excited. It's like,
Oh
hey,
yeah,
did
she
you
got
see
one
this?
yesterday.
It's like, yep.
Dude,
She was
that is
actually
awesome. I didn't know that.
So just so you know, your firing pin channel goes all the way to the middle. We just got to mod that firing pin.
Sorry, Larry.
But yeah, every time I use those things, I somehow write in, "Thanks, Seth's mom." I gotta go to a Zoom.
Yeah, sorry. Do the
right.
thing.
Oh, don't worry about it. You guys can
I actually have a Zoom.
This was fantastic, guys.
That was a
I
good
can't wait to
podcast.
Last
talk
chicken
about
tender. Anybody?
LRs.
I'm trying
I'm
to
out.
I'll take care of that.
Done.
Get it out of the way there.
Done.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.